Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Leveraging Tech-Enabled Services to Support Growth and Increase Client Accounting Services Capacity. First and foremost, we'd like to wish you a Happy New Year and hope that you and your loved ones are happy, healthy, and staying safe. For today's webinar, Ray Barlow and Bart Harris will discuss how and why more and more firms are turning to outsourcing to facilitate growth and increase capacity for their CAS practice. Before I hand it over to our presenters, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. Wolters Kluwer CCH is registered with NASPA as a sponsor of continuing professional education on the National Registry of CPE sponsors. As such, we are excited to offer 1 CPE credit for today's webinar. A total of 3 polls will be conducted throughout the presentation, and you'll need to participate in all 3 of them in order to receive CPE credit. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties when trying to submit your poll response, please make sure you let us know in the questions pane. This way we can record your answer manually and get you your CPE certificate. Your CPE certificate will be sent to the email you used to register for the webinar within 72 hours after the session. If you do not receive your certificate within 72 hours, please email us at marketing@xcmsolutions.com. Please note, CPE is not available when viewing the on-demand version of this webinar. You will also have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing them into the questions pane of the control panel. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. You will also have the opportunity to complete a survey about the webinar, our content, learning objectives, and more at the end of the presentation. This survey will also be sent to you in a follow-up email. We appreciate you taking the time to participate in that survey so we can continue to deliver meaningful content in future presentations. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Ray Barlow and Bart Harris.
Thank you, Alyssa, and welcome everyone today to our webinar. Hopefully everyone is not experiencing the same kind of crazy weather that we're experiencing here in the Northeast. Wind velocity is a problem, so we're hoping that we don't lose power. We do have some plans in case we do. But welcome again to the webinar. I'm Ray Barlow. I'm with Product Management for the Expetex Outsourcing Services here at Wolters Kluwer Tax and Accounting. I'll be joined today a little later in this presentation by Bart Harris, who's an Expetex solution consultant, also part of our Expetex team, and he'll be taking you through some of the slides along with me. But before I start, I want to just cover the agenda, what we're going to talk about today, and what we think hopefully will help you folks understand how remote staffing can really help you grow your practice. So first, we'll talk a little bit about the trends in the industry, what's going on today, what's driving some of the things that firms are doing and some of the things people are talking about. We'll give a quick discussion on where clients accounting services is today. I'll introduce you to tech-enabled accounting services and what we do. We'll talk about why firms look to us for remote staffing. Bart will take you through the Expetex remote staffing process, basically how does it work, and then I'll finish up with implementation services for today's webinar. Before I get started, I just wanted to walk you through exactly what we do here at XCM, but now we're really actually part of Wolters Kluwer. We were acquired back in September, and now for all intents and purposes, we've been assimilated into the Wolters Kluwer family. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, what we're going to talk about today is CAS remote staffing services, which we started doing back in 2005. We also provide tax outsourcing services, which we started back in 2002. Actually, the first offering from XCM was the Expetex tax preparation services. Back then, we needed a tool to help us move tax information to and from our customers. So we created what we call the Expetex Client Manager, which later became XCM, as firms asked us to not only allow them to track and the statuses of all the returns we're doing in India, but they wanted to also be able to do the same within their own firm, so they could begin to track all of the returns within the firm that were being processed. So that was how XCM was born. That's exactly where we are today in terms of the Expetex team. So let's talk about trends. And I think as we look back at 2020 and look at the trends for 2021, so many of the trends we have today are really a result of the pandemic. whether it's work from home, social distancing, Zoom meetings, and really a 24/7 news cycle that starts and ends with COVID-19 news. Our trends today are really impacted by this virus. And going back to the way things used to be may be a challenge. We really believe that work from home, the hybrid model where some folks work from home, some folks work from the office, is here to stay. And going back to the way things used to be is not something that I think a lot of people are thinking about right now. I think people are just trying to get by with the way things are today. One thing for sure that we have heard and we see is that firms have truly accelerated technology decisions, especially around the cloud. The cloud is clearly in right now. That's what people are moving to. And that has been fast-tracked by this pandemic and work from home. Desktop is really not in anymore, and it's very rare to see people moving to a desktop application. They may already have a desktop application, but they're looking to ways to move away from that desktop to the cloud. We know that a lot of folks are talking about AI and RPA and bots. You know, they're certainly here, and here at Wolters Kluwer and Expatax, we are looking at bots and RPA as well. We expect to be in that arena very shortly. And there are firms out there that are offering AI solutions, but really a lot of that is still people. It's still services in the background. There's still people doing the work, inputting and verifying the data. So it's not quite 100%, not even close to where they want it to be, but it's still something that is continuing to move forward. We really look at the role of the CPA as changing significantly, and this pandemic has really accelerated that. Relationship building now is very critical, and we're seeing firms really take advantage of that, whether it's helping their small business clients through this pandemic, helping them grow, helping them survive, a lot of different things like that. And that's why we really do believe that now is the best time to start thinking about transforming your practice into more of that advisory role. And we see that happening across the board. But it's so hard to do because, you know, it's hard to transform your firm when you're faced with, you know, just a full-time job of getting the work that you have every day done. You have high pressure deadlines. You have work compression. Both of those are in play right now. Whether you're in the CAS department trying to get work or the bookkeeping done so that your tax returns can be prepared for your small business clients, whether you're in tax season and you're approaching really the most difficult time, March and early April, to get returns out the door. There's always the crisis of the day. There's always something that all of a sudden you didn't expect to happen that happens. And this all is surrounded by the challenge around staffing and staffing shortages from time to time. So we look at these situations that makes it very difficult for firms to, even when they're spending most of their time just dealing with the situation of the day and trying to get the work out, it's really hard to think about transforming and think about moving your practice into more of an advisory role. So let's talk about client accounting services today. I think a lot of folks have been hearing a lot about client accounting services, and it's hard to pick up an industry periodical or a web page and not see something about client accounting services. And there's a lot of people offering a lot of great advice on how to grow your practice and do those kinds of things to change and really transform your firm. We look at it very simply. The cloud has definitely changed the landscape for client accounting services. I just looked the other day, and I believe QuickBooks Online is well over 5 million subscriptions now for small business clients. At one point, that number was, I think just a few years ago, was less than 1 million. So it's definitely ramping up. You've got Xero and Sage Intacct out there also offering web-based client accounting services applications. So it's continuing to expand, and it's expanding to the point where it's clearly taking over for the desktop market. We're also seeing CAS as a profitable revenue stream. The old time equals value or billing doesn't work in the CAS model. And we see a lot of firms leveraging value pricing to really increase the billing opportunities with firms. Rather than offer a billable scenario, firms are going in and offering a package of services, and maybe even including the tax return in that package of services, where they can potentially change a tax return client where they may get $2,500 a year from that person into a full service outsourced accounting client where it's $2,500 a month that they're billing for all the services that they offer. We're also seeing business process outsourcing. Firms are now handling things like accounts payable, accounts receivable for their clients, and really expanding the horizon of outsourced services that they're offering to their firms. And last, I put the definition of managerial accounting in because this is where it really boils down to the ability to really help your firms, your clients, look at the future and make better business decisions. For years, accounting firms, accountants have been very good at looking in the rearview mirror. When it comes to compliance, you get it right every time. But looking out that forward mirror or forward window and predicting the future and being able to help firms make those long-term financial decisions is where the real opportunity lies today. And we're seeing managerial accounting as one of those opportunities. So before I go any further, let's talk terminology for a second. There's so many different types of terminology in this world, and everyone has a different one. We're going to focus on client accounting services because, in my opinion, it's the overarching terminology. It covers everything. We also hear firms talking about being virtual CFOs for their clients. We hear client accounting advisory services, which, you have the client accounting stuff, and now you're offering advisory services as well. And last but not least, we hear outsourced accounting. I think they're all very similar, but for our purposes today and what we're offering, we're going to focus in on client accounting services. So firms want to move from that compliance model to more of a reliance model where your clients are reliant upon you for everything that they need from a financial perspective and from a consulting and advisory position as well. So when you think about moving from that compliance model, it really starts with the after the fact financial statement preparation write-up that you've seen in the past, and it moves into the transaction and compliance processing. And you'll notice I have $1 sign here because realistically that's the lower level fees that you get for that kind of work. But it also can be the most time consuming. So if you think about lower fees, time consuming, you know why, for the most part, especially in the past, client accounting services was not always looked at as the most profitable or favorite line of business. Obviously audit, insurance, and tax have always been the bigger opportunities within the firm. But now, as this model starts to change, we're seeing a shift from just offering these first two bullet points to offering more. So outsourced CFO, controller services, where you're having that constant interaction with client, and advising them on business performance. It's really a higher level opportunity for firms. And I've put $2 signs here. So there's a little bit more revenue for the firm in that. And then the final piece is when you're offering the whole package. You're offering a full package of client accounting services, from the transactional work to the compliance work. You're offering performance advice for them, helping them perform better. You're giving them advice. It could be on a number of different topics, and you're also a consultant as well. So you don't have to do all 5 of those, but you get where I'm coming from. As you offer this package, it's more revenue, it's more opportunity, and certainly provides you with that focus about your client being very reliant on what you have to offer. So as you think about all of these things, the one challenge you have when it comes to transactions and compliance is some of the best opportunities you have out there are with businesses or small business clients that have heavy transactional needs, heavy transactional needs. But they're great clients for you to offer your services to, but you don't have the staff to get the work done, so you can't take that client on. And that's one of the challenges when you think about what are the best clients I have, and that's where remote staffing can make a huge difference for you. So let's talk about tech-enabled accounting services. But before we do that, we've got our first poll. Alyssa?
Perfect. So the first polling question is, what experience have you had with offshore outsourcing of tax and/or client accounting services? Currently leveraging remote staff for tax and/or accounting work. Tried in the past, currently not using remote staff. Never tried, but interested in learning more, or we presently do not have a need for outsourced services. We'll give everyone about 30 more seconds to answer. Just about 15 seconds left to answer. And as a reminder, it's important to answer all 3 polling questions in order for CPE eligibility. All right, we're going to close the poll and share the results. Turn it back to you, Ray.
All right, thank you. Thanks everyone for participating. Great news is the highest number of the highest percentage of people who answered this poll were C, never tried, but interested in learning. We've got about 28% of the folks have tried in the past, currently not using it, or are currently using it. So, and there's about 35% who presently don't feel a need for outsourced services. So hopefully we can change their mind before the end of this webinar. But thanks again for providing your input on this. So moving to the next slide, let's talk a little bit about Expatax and our specialization in CAS and why we're even focused on this. I think obviously we consider ourselves to be experts in this area, especially when it comes to business process. And so often CAS outsourcing is about process. We have Lean Six Sigma certified consultants who participate in the implementation and support, ongoing support of the CAS outsourcing services. We've got Sage Intact, QBO, Zero, Bill.com certified consultants on staff and doing the work. Our team in India has been trained often on these applications, and we use them every day. Our XCM platform has well over 42,000 users, and all of those users have specific business processes that we've built, and many of them are around the CAS part of their business. And we have a pretty good footprint in the top 300 firms. And if you look at this, over 50% of those firms are using XCM in their CAS department. And then we've been doing this for 15 plus years. We've got over 100 employees, and each year 25,000 tasks that we provide. So we feel pretty good about our background. And right now, it's our team is the largest it's ever been. We're seeing a tremendous increase in requests for our services, and that's all good news as far as we're concerned. So CAS outsourcing is on the rise. CAS remote staffing is on the rise. So let's talk a little bit about tech-enabled accounting services. So I think when you think about tech-enabled, you think about the business model that where we leverage technology and industry trends really and apply them to a business model. We particularly using existing tools, libraries, or anything that's already in the market today that makes you more efficient, more smarter, or we may even provide a new service. So we're using existing technology to deliver outcomes faster, better, and cheaper. When I think of that, I think of Uber as one example. They found a way to use GPS technology from the 60s and combine it with a new platform, mobile computing, to revolutionize the transportation industry. And they're not selling anything new. They're certainly not selling technology, but they're offering a way to connect people to the kind of service that they want. So whether it's Uber or Lyft, that's one example of combining really technology, process, people, and then leveraging the cloud in an effort to really be better, more efficient, better execution overall. And if you think about it, all they did really was they used technology companies like hardware and software companies to create something new, kind of the same way Reese's peanut butter cup combined peanut butter and chocolate. So that's what tech-enabled services are all about. The way we look at our remote staffing, although it is outsourcing, our remote staff workers are not really, they're not physically present in the business. They work separate offshore locations, hence the term remote. But our offshore remote staff are assigned to the firm, and they work exclusively for that firm. Thus, our naming it of remote staff. Outsourcing can be almost anybody doing the work for a firm on behalf of a firm. We actually assign a full-time equivalent to your firm, and they're assigned to you for those 12 months to do the work that you want them to do. We handle all the heavy lifting. We handle the hiring, the recruiting, training. We manage that staff. We help them understand, what is needed. We provide the supervisory work, coverage, and that's all our responsibility with Expetex. We often leverage the firm to give us the information we need to help train them on the particular processes that you might need. But basically, we handle most of the recruiting and training on our own. And then we can easily scale up or down to meet your growth, to meet the needs of your client. If for firms who struggle hiring and retaining talent, you don't need to worry about that. We'll hire and we'll retain, and we'll easily staff up within 30 days if you have a need for us to do so. So that's why we consider what we do remote staffing. So how do we actually tech enable our remote staff? And it's pretty simple. Where possible, we utilize cloud applications to the fullest. Although not everybody that we do business with uses cloud, where we can and where we often find ourselves these days is really leveraging the cloud with existing technology that's already out there. We work on the same applications that your firm does, whether it's QBO, Xero, Sage Intacct, Bill.com, HubDoc. The cloud ecosystem is huge. Nobody can know every one of these applications and how to use them, but we are certainly very well versed in the main ones and know several. We've had training, physical training from the team on Xero, on HubDoc, on QBO, Sage Intacct. So we're well versed in these areas, and we can certainly provide the kind of support that you need. And we leverage the XCM platform. It's the secret sauce that makes this work. Without the platform, we wouldn't be able to do what we do today. It drives our productivity, it drives our accuracy, and it drives our ability to turn things around more quickly. And we'll talk about that a little later. And if you think about it, more than 50% of the work we do leverages today's technology, whether it's the apps that we work in, the XCM platform that we work in, it's all there, and it's all part of our tech-enabled service strategy. And we don't rely on email to communicate. I'll talk a little bit more about how we leverage the XCM platform, but we think you've got enough email already. And isn't it difficult when you get an email from someone and you kind of file it away for a bit and then you gotta go find it again? I don't know about you, but that's a painful challenge for me, going back and finding an email that I know I got but I can't find. You don't ever have to worry about that with us. All the communication and all of the things that we do are handled through the XCM platform. So we hopefully save you a lot of time in that area. So why look to remote staffing? Why do firms come to us in the first place? When you think about the polling question that we're going to ask, I'm going to hand it over to Alyssa, but this is really the nuts and bolts of what is going on today in the marketplace. So Alyssa, it's all yours.
Thanks, Ray. So this polling question is, what would you say is the #1 challenge managing your firm today? Attracting new clients, cybersecurity and data privacy, identifying opportunities for practice improvement and cost, raising profitability, recruiting and retaining talent. We'll give everyone just over 30 more seconds to answer. Just about 15 more seconds and we'll close the poll.
I think the poll is closed. There's no doubt what #1 is going to be.
I agree with you. All right, and we're going to close the poll now, and I will share the results and turn it back to you, Ray.
All right, thanks, Alyssa. So by far, the number one challenge, 43% of you folks believe recruiting and retaining talent is the number one challenge in the industry. What's interesting is there's even a bigger discrepancy between number one and number two in this poll. So number one, 43% was recruiting and retention. Number two was raising profitability at 18%. And number three was identifying opportunities for practice improvement, which was 15%. So we have the latest survey from IFOT, which is a survey. This was done right during the pandemic, so it's pretty accurate in terms of what the biggest challenges are. And I was going to point out how the actual difference between challenge number 1 and 2 has grown since the prior year and the year before. There's now a 10-point differential between recruiting and retention and raising profitability. In this particular poll, there was a significant difference between number 1 that we just did today. And this is clearly a challenge that is not going away. The primary reason it's not going away is the workforce is changing. Every day, more and more millennials are added to the workforce and more boomers are out of the workforce. And millennials look at things differently, not good or bad, or just different. They truly believe in work-life balance, and they have a different way of looking at how things used to be. When I remember when I first started, it was, put in the time, work hard, get, and good things will happen, but it's based on tenure and things like that. It's certainly not like that anymore. And I think millennials, they didn't come out of college to do bookkeeping. They didn't go to college to do bookkeeping. They came out of college to do something a lot more than that. And if you look at the way they're moving around to try to find the best job for them, that is a significant challenge for accounting firms. I think it's even worse to hire somebody, train them for 6 months, just about time when they're ready to really start being productive for you, they leave. We were talking to someone not too long ago who hired someone in her CAS department, and within 30 days that person left. It's so painful, but it happens a lot. So that's part of what's causing the recruiting and retention problems, is the changing workforce. The other challenge is remote work. People love it, right? Everybody loves to work from home, I guess. Well, maybe not everybody, but I've heard a lot of positive things about working from home. You can save money on gas. You don't have to deal with traffic. Oh boy, I'll tell you, for some people like me, that was a big deal. You have the flexibility. There's a lot of advantages to working from home for the person. There's some disadvantages as well, and some of those are, obviously it's harder to keep the team motivated. People are zoomed out oftentimes. Collaboration, communication is difficult. When they were sitting right next to you, that was a whole different scenario. And accountability, I think a lot of leaders within accounting firms are concerned about accountability and productivity. Are we as productive as we used to be when we were in the office? And let's face it, work from home technology is nowhere near as good as it is in the office. In the office, you have 2, 3, 4 monitors, you have high-speed internet, you have great copy machines, you have far better technology in the office. Imagine trying to do a tax return on a laptop. That's not the easiest thing to do, and productivity would suffer in those scenarios. So we know that there are challenges with working from home and remote work. There's also onboarding challenges. So it's hard to onboard someone when they're working from home. You don't have the ability to really stay with them for long periods of time and ensure that you're giving them the proper onboarding and training that they need. So all of these add up to challenges in the marketplace. I also love this slide. If you had more time, what would you want to do with that time? Well, I think we all agree it would be great if you could. Almost 50% of the people said, yeah, I would love to vacation and relax more. But look at all the other reasons: training for staff, business management, looking for new clients, professional development. The one thing I don't see here is compliance work. Nobody really wants more time to do compliance work. And that's where firms like us can help. Because if we can free up your time so that you can do more vacationing and relaxing, or you could train your staff or do work on your business more frequently. Business management, there's a study about how much time you should spend working in your business, working on your business, and really studying your business. And if you're spending all your time in your business, you're really not devoting enough time on your business to make it better. And that's part of this challenge, is you're in that business all the time. So these are some of the challenges we face. Typical reasons firms come to us, we mentioned it earlier, and the top two are really the top two reasons. And then when you start pulling it down to onboarding, training, but the real challenge is the turnover part. It's really a killer. Some folks just, it's very difficult to see the kind of turnover that's happening, especially in a smaller firm where one person is a significant that leaves can make a significant difference for everybody else who's there. We also hear they don't have time for advisory work. I don't have time for it. I'm too busy doing compliance work. I just don't have time. And then inability to grow their CAS practice. A lot of firms, a lot of managing partners and people who are owners of these firms, they know how important this is, but they just don't have the time to do it. Maybe they can't afford to add the staff, and maybe they don't know how, and maybe they're just not sure how to do it. And then the last item on here is the lower cost model, which is what we offer. I'm going to give you an example of the savings in our typical environment, and it could be different depending on where you are. This salary of $52,000 could be higher, lower, depending on what part of the country. If you're on the left or right coast, it could be higher. If you're in the heartland, it could be lower or just about the same. But I tried to take an average, and when you look at this, what we're trying to say is, okay, if you have a $52,000 salaried person, you're going to pay some taxes for that person. You're going to pay some amount of training and benefits, and you're going to also pay some amount of computer supplies. And it should be, we're looking at a fully loaded cost of about $75,000. Typical utilization percentage is 82%. So that person is, that 75,000, we would add another 13,500 to it for the 18% of non-utilization. So we're looking at a staff person cost, fully loaded, 88,900. Our staffing model is 176 hours of staff time, 40 hours of supervisor time each month for 2,300 a month, or 27,600 a year. So the savings in this particular model would be about 61,000. So that's how we look at the return on our investment. Obviously, we have to produce accurate results. We have to turn it around as you need it. But on a very face value, we feel that there's significant economic value in leveraging CAS outsourcing or remote staffing. So our third polling question, what is your, oh, sorry, Alyssa, it's all yours.
That's all right. The third and final polling question is, what is your biggest concern about utilizing remote staffing services? Employee staff perception, client perception, security of client data, quality of work, or loss of control? And we'll give about 45 more seconds to answer this last polling question. As a reminder, it's important for CPE eligibility that you answer all three polling questions. Just about 15 more seconds. All right, we're going to close the poll and share the results. And Ray, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, Bart, are you ready? Are you on deck? You ready to handle the next one?
Right after you cover the poll, absolutely.
All right, okay, so quality of work was number one. 38% of the folks are concerned about the quality of work, and we do spend a lot of time on quality, and Bart will take you through the way we set up our teams to ensure that we do the proper review of everything that's being sent back to you. The next one was client perception. I could go on forever on client perception. I think today we underestimate the strategic partnership and the ability of our accountants to really talk to their clients and have their clients do pretty much what they want them to do. I think you have a pretty much great relationship with these firms, and if you tell them you're going to do this, they're okay with it. If they're not okay, you don't have to do it for them. There's plenty of opportunity, but I think client perception is always up at the top. And then security, we'll talk about security, loss of control. We'll talk about how XCM prevents that from happening. And then nobody seems to be that concerned about the employee or staff perception. It's kind of interesting. Some of the most important things that you can do is ensure that your staff are on board with this. And the way you communicate that to them is critical. So we can help you with that as well. But I'm going to turn this over to Bart.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it. So I'm going to cover the myths on outsourcing. And again, a lot of these come up during the presentations that I do. And the 6 that come up a little bit were covered in the slide prior: employee perception, which obviously didn't get a lot of votes, client perception, security, partner perception, quality, and loss of control. So we'll touch on each one of these one at a time just for a little bit. So we'll hit employee perception first. And employee perception, it's common for employees to be a little hesitant about the idea of outsourcing at first. It's important to talk to the employees about the benefits of outsourcing, the work-life balance they're going to gain, the ability to work at a higher skill level, have the opportunity to exercise and strengthen, to accelerate their growth in their career at a much faster pace than if they're just doing data entry. Next one we're going to talk briefly about is the client perception. Again, you are your client's trusted advisors whom they trust that you're asking the right questions, performing the correct due diligence before entering into a new agreement. Outsourcing has been going on for decades. It's commonplace in the market. 100% of the big 4 currently, and many of the top 300 firms have their own outsourcing offices in India with thousands of employees. So we'll touch on security for a moment. Our securities and controls are tighter than the vast majority of firms out there. Why, you may ask, is because that's our business and we have to. We undergo an annual SOC 2 certification, and we'll touch on that in another slide here in a few moments. So we'll go to next, the partner perception. And it says, my clients will never go for this. Basically, as I deal with this, clients are extremely happy once the work is getting done. It's getting done on a timely basis, giving the firm more time to spend on the bigger challenges. From all my customers, once they've implemented, I rarely hear this even come up as an objection. It's normally just in the partner's mind at that time. So next thing, we'll go into quality. So, again, on quality, our team members undergo firm and software specific training programs. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The FTEs, as Ray mentioned, are dedicated to the firm for which they're assigned. We don't do any pooling, and thus these FTEs become more knowledgeable and efficient over time. The firm's specific procedures, documentation is kept up to date and reviewed regularly. And we'll talk about that during our weekly and biweekly meetings. And again, the complementary supervisory review, as Ray mentioned, acts as a control center to ensure the work and questions are consistent and accurate back to the firm. And then last is loss of control. XCM workflow increases a firm's efficiency and effectiveness by providing standardized processes and workflow, as well as you can see anytime, anywhere access to the task information. The FTEs work just like a firm's remote staff. They have higher visibility and control through the use of XCM workflow, and then the dedicated US team members to facilitate this process. So on the next slide, we're going to just briefly talk about the SOC 2 certification. We've had SOC 2 certifications performed annually for over the past 5 years. These are conducted in accordance with the AICPA standards, which are following the highest trust services criteria available, and they're regarding security availability, processing integrity, and our confidentiality. So, we're pretty proud every year when we do this, and it's not an easy task for us either. On the next slide, probably one that I like to address the most is the voice of the customers. I have the benefit each week of sitting in on many of our remote staffing calls with the clients and with the teams in India. And I get to hear a lot of these comments live, just not in print. And I've actually been able to capture some of these. So, two that, again, not to read through every one of them with you, but two that I like to mention, is we have been so impressed with the Expatax team. That when I'm on a call like that and the team hears it and I hear it, again, that just adds credibility to what we're doing. And then probably the second most important one I think out there, maybe the most important one, especially for this call, we are loving XCM. Wish we would have done it years ago. So obviously my point to that with everybody on the call today is that sooner is better than later, as some of these firms have found out. So let's go to the next slide where we'll talk a little bit about the process and how does it work. And you can see on this slide, this is the Expatax remote staff model. On the left side is a screenshot of our tax outsourcing. On the right side is a screenshot of our CAS remote staffing. In the middle is the XCM solution that is used for either process. And I will note that a lot of our customers use us for both. They're doing tax outsourcing and client account services remote staffing. And as Ray mentioned earlier, the center section there is what we consider the secret sauce. Gives you the availability to assign tasks to individuals, checklists to reinforce the processes we're going through, client-specific project points with individual clients, and then allows you, to associate tasks between departments. So again, we'll keep in mind secret sauce, and we'll move to the next one of our staff, which is probably number 2 on our secret performance levels. The experienced staff, probably key there is we believe we become an extension of your staff. And we do put our folks through a very rigorous training curriculum. Realistically, you'll see there that the staff person has the equivalent of 1 to 3 years bookkeeping experience. And even once we hire them, before they're deployed to a firm as an FTE, they go through 2 months additional intensive training with us before they're put onto a firm's as an FTE. So then we have the experienced supervisors that are also training the FTEs, and they're going to provide the review of the work completed, since all the work prior to going back to the firm does go through the review process. And again, this is where we're using people, process, and technology. And obviously you can see we've been refining this process since 2002, so we've been doing it for quite some time. Next, on the slide next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the team structure. We've talked about it a little bit, but each firm, depending on how many FTEs you contract for, could be 1, 2, or showing 3 in this example. That FTE is going to report up to the supervisor. That supervisor is going to be responsible for the file review prior to going back to the firm, as well as all firm communication. That supervisor there also is going to report up to the team manager. And again, I want to reiterate the point, and it's very important, that we work in pods. We don't work in a pooled environment. And the way that we work, again, gives great consistency to the work that you're getting back, and familiarity to your FTE of the work they're doing, and familiarity for the firm to review it much quicker because they know what they're getting back. I will also mention that we do have weekly or bi-weekly meetings once the firm's implemented. Again, this is where you're going to have the opportunity to talk with your team directly so we can tweak anything. On that call is normally going to be the supervisor, the manager. As you see on the left side, we also have a training coordinator and the department manager, the general manager, and they also join in on those calls when available as well. And on my last slide that I want to talk about is a little bit about how does the outsourcing work? So you can see, again, you get a new client, you're going to get access into their work papers and the things that you need to complete the work, and then it's to your accounting firm. From there, we're going to enter the project, or you're going to enter the project, and where he's going to talk about the implementation. We're going to help you with all this, but that project would get entered into XCM workflow. You're going to assign it out to your team, to the CAS staff member. They're going to have availability into your tech stack, and they'll do the work in your tech stack. They'll complete the work, and then they may have some questions or have some review points or anything. They will note those in XCM. It'll go back to your firm. From that point, you may answer those questions so we can complete the work. You answer the questions, and you can see then it goes back to the team. Team's going to take those answers, update the information into whichever product they're using or whichever technology we need to edit, complete the work, send it back to you, with the cleared review points. And then if you have no further questions, the work is done. If there's still something outstanding, or you want to edit or want us to edit anything else, just go through that circle again. What we want to make sure you understand is this system is probably no different than what you're currently doing today in your workflow. It's no different than if you were working with a remote employee, even within the United States. And probably what I want to leave you with before I end my part of the presentation is that we really do, and the team really does, consider themselves an extension of your current team. So, Ray, at that point, I'll take it back over to you.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you very much. So let's move into some of the processes that we build that Bart had mentioned just a second ago. And there are key features of the XCM platform that make this work. One of them is the standardization that we use to help you build your processes, whether it's a monthly close or a accounts receivable or financial statement prep, whatever it might be. We'll help you build a process, and then we'll embed that process into your workflow to XCM platform, and we'll leverage what we call dynamic checklists to allow you to parse that work out to more than one person on any particular task. If you're doing a monthly close, it may require 3 or 4 different people pulling information together to complete that close. Using our checklist, you can do that, and I'll show you an example of one. The other thing is, I mentioned earlier that we don't use email. All of our communication is tracked through XCM workflow. We have knowledge and instructions. You can post questions and get answers. You can send review points. The most important thing here is if you post instructions for us on that for a particular task, those instructions will be what we use to make sure that we do the work accurately for you. So we use that to communicate back and forth. Predictability with recurring tasks. You can spread the workload out. You know your capacity. It's really important to be able to do that. The other thing is you can easily assign and reassign and manage your work. If we have someone who's out and we need to reassign your work to someone else that day, we can easily leverage that and make that happen. And the last thing is visibility. Knowing who has a task. This is really important for you around the loss of control concern. You always know who has the task. You always know what the task is. You always know where it is in the process. You always know when it's due. And if it's not complete, you know why it's not complete. All of that is the visibility you gain from the XCM platform. This is an example of a checklist that we've built for a standard procedure or a standard process embedded into the XCM application, and it's a checklist. And this checklist has, you can see to the right where you can assign it to multiple different people. Whoops. And let's get back there. You can assign it to multiple people, and each time, and you will still have visibility to this, and you can see as things are getting done, they're signed off here on the right. And once all these items are done, the task is complete, you can then move forward. So we think that CAS is different than tax. Tax is very linear. You complete one step at a time. In CAS, it is not linear at all. There's oftentimes multiple people need to be working on the same task to get it done, and that's where you find this process works. This is the example of the task-specific knowledge and instructions. You can see here, I know it's pretty hard to to possibly read this, but these are the client-specific nuances that we see. So if you have a specific way to handle something for a particular client, you would put that into here as a knowledge or instructions. All of the review points are here. Any questions you've asked remain here until you clear them out. All of that is right here. You don't need to go searching for that in your email folder. And recurring tasks, we think it's table stakes. This in the world of CAS, so many of the tasks happen every week, every month, every quarter. The ability to set these recurring tasks and not have to worry about them being created, you don't have to worry about the administrative nightmare of creating them. They automatically get scheduled for you. And then what's really nice is if you set those tasks, recurring tasks, the points and anything attached to that task also carries forward. So if you have a particular knowledge or instruction point and you assign this as a recurring task, anything that's in those points will always carry forward as well. So you won't lose that either. So it's nice to be able to keep that. So what's some of the work that we do? Well, we do weekly and monthly bookkeeping. I'm not going to go through every piece of this. We do the AR and AP, a lot of the different things, and obviously period end accounting. So those are some of the basic things we do on the left. I'm going to point your attention to some of the other things that we do on the right, which are what we call special projects, whether it's litigation support, Excel spreadsheets, database work, other non-income related. We do audit work, where we can do materiality percentages. There's a lot of different things that we can do as part of what the team provides. But the basic stuff that we do every day is on the left-hand side. We leverage all of the solutions that you're familiar with in the world of cloud accounting, the world of CAS, whether it's QuickBooks Online. I mentioned this before. We work. Our team works with Bill.com. I think some of these firms have changed their names recently, like Receipt Bank and T-Sheets. But we also do other things like sales tax. We can go into engagement binders and work out of those engagement binders. We still do some work with QuickBooks Desktop, so we're not out of that. We do work with ADP primarily as on the payroll compliance side. There's only two things that we don't do in this business. We don't move money, and we don't do payroll. Well, there's three things, because payroll is moving money, and then we don't talk to your clients. So we won't talk to your clients unless you're involved, unless you ask us, but typically we don't do that. So we will do payroll compliance, but we're not a payroll processing company. All of these things that we do really creates time for each of you to scale your practice, to offer the outsourced accounting to your clients, to offer client advisory services to them, allows you to spend more time helping them grow their business and ultimately to be that strategic advisor. You know, I have a good friend of mine who a few years ago became president of a company, a small company, and he wanted to he had an accountant, and his accountant was doing all his work for him, compliance work, but he wanted to grow that business, and he went out for a strategic plan, and he ended up getting that strategic plan from a company. And I asked him, did you involve your accountant in that bid that you send out? And he said, no, I didn't. I said, why not? Your accountant knows your finances better than anyone does. He said, well, I talked to my accountant. He was always too busy, really busy. So I figured he didn't have time for this. And it turned out to be a 6-figure contract that he handed to somebody else and not his accountant. So I think there's plenty of time if you can free yourself up for some of these other things to go out and get that kind of business from your clients. And that's what we want to do. We want to create that win-win relationship and have you look at our team and as our existing customers do today as your strategic partner. So on the implementation side, this is really critical as we think about the things that have to be done in an implementation. Our team is there to help you create the workflows to and from your firm and our team. You may have existing workflows, and we can certainly embed those in, but this is usually a one-time effort so that we have what we needed to perform the work. We also set up and build all of those processes that you don't have and embed them into the XCM platform. And so there's many things that are part of this. We help you create recurring tasks. We set up, and capture all the key information that's needed. We create the integration between your firm and our remote staff, giving you that visibility that you need. And then obviously we need to set up the technology so that we can access what we need to access to get the work done. And then finally, we train your team on how to use XCM solutions, the XCM workflow product, in order to facilitate the work back and forth. And then we don't just leave you after the implementation. Once we're sure the work has been submitted, we've been able to get the work done, we've got what we need to go live, we set up recurring calls, and I think Bart mentioned that. On a regular basis, we connect with your firm and our leadership in India and our leadership here in the US, and we talk about what's going on. We want to make sure that if there's suggestions for improvements on the processes and the work that we're doing, that we take advantage of that. If there's things that may not be handling right, we want to make sure we address those right away. And we want to make sure that we have a pretty good handle on everything that you want from us right from the beginning, and so that we can ensure that we are a strategic partner to you. And then we have our annual complimentary performance reviews where we look at how you're using our services. Is there anything else you could gain by other services we might offer that would help you in the work that you're doing? And then all of this is designed for the real continuous performance, and improvement that we want as we move forward. So this is all of the things that we do for our firms today. And I want to thank everyone for attending. We're at the end of close to the end of our hour. It's been wonderful presenting to you folks. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us, your rep, whomever. We'd be happy to answer those questions. We may have time for one question, Alyssa, looking at the time, if you have any questions.
We do. We have 2 questions that have come in so far. The first question is, what happens if the firm does not have well-documented processes?
Great question. That's what we do. And by the way, most firms don't have well-documented processes. So we go on site, or today, not so much, but we will work with you via the web or virtually to create the processes. At XCM, we have hundreds of processes that we've created over the years. I'm sure we can give you a pretty good idea of a process, and then you can tweak it however way you want. So don't worry if you don't have well-documented processes. We have hundreds of them.
Perfect. It looks like we have time for one more question. Are there separate full-time equivalents for accounting and tax?
Yes. So our tax team is our tax people. They're chartered accountants that specialize in tax, whereas our bookkeeping team or our CAS team are bookkeeping, accounting, specializing in accounting work, usually 1 to 3 years experience. So we separate the 2 teams. Interestingly enough, we've been talking about having a third team, a team that kind of merges the work being done by the bookkeeping team to move it into the tax team to get the tax return done. But today we kind of we have 2 separate teams and 2 separate leaders running those teams.
Perfect. We got a few more questions. I know we have 2 minutes, so we'll see how many we can get to. If we don't get to all your questions, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. The next question is, do firms typically start with outsourcing tax or CAS services? Is one easier than the other to implement?
So I would say tax is easier for us to implement. It's really a focused time period where most of the work is coming in from February through April, and it's really a different type of work. So, and it's not ongoing, and typically it ends at some point in time. CAS is ongoing. It's a 12-month process. The type of work we do is focused on a myriad of different accounting transactions. So it's a little bit harder to implement, or not because it's hard, but because we've got to build those processes. We've got to make sure that the firm is got the XCM workflow platform working the way they want it, and then we've got to make sure all the technology is in place. But for me, I think we can probably implement tax in a week. It'll probably take a month to implement CAS.
Perfect. And we're just about out of time. There is one more question, and I know a few have asked if we can share the recording. I would be happy to share the recording of today's presentation with you. The last question is, do you do consulting on helping firms set up XCM to use for CAS processes?
Yes, we actually have a consulting team, a team of people who specialize in consulting for XCM workflow. So that team is also part of the implementation team when we implement CAS outsourcing, and have been in the past as well. So yes, the answer is we do have people who consult on workflow.
Fantastic. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so thank you everyone for attending, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.